Hello everyone. In this series of videos, we're going to walk through lesson 7D, which is really only page 9 for this series. This page 9 is actually a little bit different from page 10. So you'll notice in the learning plan that they're listed as two separate lessons, and that's because each page has a slightly different focus. If you want to do it all in one sitting, you're certainly welcome to do that, but a lot of what we're going to do on page 9 is kind of its own self-contained idea that I think is important to digest and make sense of before you move to page 10, which is why I don't think it's necessary to do it all in one sitting. I would recommend that you kind of spread it out a little bit over the course of 2 days or 2 separate work sessions so that you can let the ideas sink in. If that's not important to you and you'd rather kind of marathon this thing, then that's fine too. I just want to point out that this lesson really is kind of like two completely separate things stitched together. So don't necessarily bite off too much without making sure that you take some time to really think on the ideas first. In any case, 7D is all about what we call arithmetic series. And that probably reminds you of the word arithmetic that we've been using all along throughout this packet for the sequences that have an adding or a subtracting pattern. And an arithmetic series is very similar to an arithmetic sequence. It still has an adding or subtracting pattern. But the definition of the word series in this context is that it's a sum of numbers that have an arithmetic pattern. So if you take a look at question number 4, you can see the arithmetic pattern pretty obviously. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 is obviously adding by 2 each time, thus the word arithmetic to describe it. But the word series refers to the idea that instead of separating these numbers with commas, like we've been doing up to this point, we now have plus signs in between each number in the sequence. And those plus signs refer to a sum, and a series is the sum of all the numbers in the pattern, or all the numbers in the sequence. So generally speaking, if you want to just kind of think about this vocabulary, a sequence is something that is a basic list of numbers, and the key punctuation that you might want to remind yourself there of is a comma. Sequences are separating terms with commas in between. And again, you can go back to any of the old pages and kind of remind yourself of what that looks like. A sequence is something like -8, comma, -2, comma, 4, comma, 10, etc. And a series is essentially a sequence that is being added together. A series is a sum of the terms. So the key punctuation you can expect to see in a series is a plus sign. In any case, that's just terminology. It's just something to be aware of, but certainly something that you might want to familiarize yourself with so that as I use the word series throughout this series of videos and going further, pun intended, you'll have a sense of why I'm using that word specifically. In any case, question number 1 is going to help us kind of dip our toes into the world of series. In question number 1, it says to consider the sum of the integers 1 through 10. First of all, just as a vocab reminder, integers are whole numbers. So the sum of the integers 1 through 10 is basically the sum of the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth until you get to 10. Now, I am a visual person, so I like to see the numbers all written out. You might not feel that need, so you can kind of decide for yourself if you need to write them out yourself, or if maybe just looking at the screen and pausing it and staring at the numbers will help. But in any case, the goal here is to find the sum of these numbers in any way that you can. Now in question letter B, it's asking you to create 2 different algebraic expressions. Don't worry about that part. I wouldn't worry too much right now about anything other than finding the sum. Now, the reason why I'm going to ask you to find that sum in any way that you want to is to just kind of trust your instincts. What's your instinct telling you to do with such a tedious task? Are you going to do 1 plus 2 and then take that answer plus 3 and then that answer plus 4 and then that answer plus 5? If you want to group the numbers together strategically, maybe you're kind of thinking about things like, ooh, if I group certain numbers together, I can add the numbers more easily. Maybe you're thinking of this in entirely different ways. And maybe your temptation is, well, I'll just grab a calculator and type 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. My challenge to you here is to try not to use a calculator. And I know that seems cruel, and of course, there's nothing stopping me in a video from enforcing that. If you're going to pull out a calculator, I obviously have no way of knowing. But the reason why I'm going to implore you to use your integrity on this and to try not to use a calculator is because if you look ahead at question number 2 and then at question number 3, notice what the questions are eventually going to ask you to do. In number 3, you're going to have to find the sum of the integers from 1 to 50. Even with a calculator, that's taking a long time to type in 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus all the way to 50. I mean, even if you're sitting there at home going, Herbert, I got time, I am in quarantine, I have nothing else to do, I still think you value your time more than that. Spending 20 minutes typing in every integer probably doesn't sound all that appealing. And then if you looked further down the page and realize that eventually you're going to have to do something like question letter E, 100 plus 101 plus, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on, to 999 and then 1,000, I would hope your common sense is going to kick in and you would say to yourself, oh wait, if eventually I'm going to have to add up literal hundreds of terms, there's no way that typing each individual number in a calculator is the easiest way. That can't be efficient. So that's why, even though it sounds a bit cruel to say to do number 1 without a calculator, I'm going to ask you to try and to think about what you can do strategically to do this without a calculator, so that when you do have to go into those later parts of the task, you'll have some thinking that's already happened. You'll have some instincts that have already built, and perhaps it'll make that task a little less daunting. Between the end of this video and the time that you start the next video, do question number 1 and check your answer. And then try to do question number 2 and question number 3 with the same strategy. In the next video, I'll share with you a strategy that you can try if you're totally out of ideas, but I'm really going to encourage you here to pause or to stop and to really take some time between videos to think about questions 1, 2, and 3 on your own without just kind of cheating and looking ahead to what to do. Challenge yourself and trust your instincts and see if they take you somewhere. If you're genuinely out of ideas and you can't think of a single way to do questions 2 and 3 without typing them into the calculator, then in the next video I'll show you a strategy. But again, try to tap into your instincts. I'll bet there are a few people out there who are already kind of thinking about this and might be able to figure out a way that suits them.